As a small business owner, have you ever felt overwhelmed by the pressure of choosing the right hire or leading a team? Or have you ever found yourself tolerating a bad hire because you fear trying and failing again as you repeat the hiring process? If so, you're not alone, and you are in the right place. Welcome to the Growing Your Team podcast. The Growing Your Team podcast teaches business owners like you to expand your unique business by teaching you to master the hiring and team management process. Hiring and managing a team does not have to be a challenge. You just have to learn to do it right. And the Growing Your Team podcast teaches you how to become a confident leader who hires right every single time. Now, let's jump into the show where each episode you will learn tips on how to identify what type of help you need on your team, how to source amazing candidates, how to conduct interviews that lead you to your ideal team member, how to onboard successfully, and how to lead every person in your business so you have a team of rock stars who you are happy to pay every single paycheck. So let's jump in and teach you how to hire like a pro. Hello, Jamie Van Kuyk here, and welcome back to the Growing Your Team podcast. Today, I have on guest Mark Hurrell. Mark is a sales manager with GMS, or as it's fully called, Group Management Services, Inc. Today, in this episode, we are going to talk about all the services, or I guess a lot of the services that GMS provides and how they can benefit you as a small business owner. Originally from Cleveland, Ohio, Mark now lives down here in the Tampa Bay, Florida area, close to where I'm located in the headquarters of Growing Your Team. As I said, today we're talking about everything that GMS does for small businesses and how you can benefit from services like theirs to be able to provide outstanding benefits for your team members. We're going to talk about first, payroll. This is one of those necessities if you have a team. So we're going to talk about why using payroll companies are beneficial. So that way you ensure you are compliant with all the taxes and forms and everything that are required if you have employees, and how a company like GMS can help ensure you're doing everything correct when you have employees that are located in different states and different areas. Then we're going to move into the oh-so-fun topic of benefits. As small business owners, benefits seem like one of these things that are out of your reach. They seem like one of those things that are super, super expensive and you don't know how you can afford them. But guess what? There are ways where you can provide health insurance to your employees at a much cheaper rate than if you go to the market independently. So Mark is going to share all those details with us so that way you can be competitive when you go out to hire your first or next employee. Because as we talk about in this episode, compensation looks different depending on the benefits your organization offers. So a $50,000 paycheck looks way different if a company offers benefits than if a company doesn't. So let's jump into the conversation so you can learn all about payroll services and how you can be competitive when it comes to how you can be competitive when it comes to hiring employees, even though you're a small business. Hi, Mark. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Growing Your Team podcast.
Hey, Jamie, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it and excited to get rolling.
Yes, I am so excited about today's topic. I feel like it's one of those things in businesses that small business owners dread, but really need to know at the same time. So I'm excited to give people details that maybe will make them feel more at ease about these topics and see that things are possible and not overwhelming when you're in a small business. So
Definitely.
Yeah. So let's jump in with the first portion of this. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Yeah. So I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio. I went to Bowling Green State University, and I started at GMS Group Management Services about 8.5 years ago as a sales rep. And then about 5 years in, I got promoted to sales manager. So I was running one of our teams up at our corporate office in Ohio. And then back in April, I actually came down here to Tampa for some warmer weather, and then also to lead our Tampa team. So I'm excited to be down here. GMS has been around since 1996. We're what's known as a PEO, a professional employer organization. So really, we help startups and small businesses just streamline a lot of the HR functions that no one really wants to deal with. And then along with that, we help provide some buying power.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I love it. And it's probably one of those things like there are some terms in there. People are like, I have no idea what that is. But we're going to get into that. So if you're listening, you're going to feel 100% comfortable about these topics at the end. So let's start first. So you had mentioned, what is it? PEO. Let's talk a
Yeah,
little bit more about that. What exactly does that actually mean? And then we'll get into
sure.
the meat of today's conversation.
Absolutely. So, professional employer organization, we partner with small to medium sized businesses. And the way that we create the relationship, it's called co employment. So, what we do is we're able to extend our buying power on things like healthcare, on things like workers' comp, things like 401k, and really just take a lot of the headaches when it comes to HR off of a business owner's plate. And the way I like to explain it is we really kind of like let the pilot fly the plane. So a business owner gets into business to do marketing or construction or whatever their area of expertise is. And then we just bring subject matter experts to handle, the stuff that doesn't bring in any revenue. So that's kind of in a nutshell what, GMS does as a PEO.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that stands out to me about this is when I was younger, my dad ran his own small business. And part of the reason that he joined the local chamber at that time is by joining the chamber, they could tap into kind of like their benefits. So like the chamber at that time acted as like the PEO. So we were able to get healthcare through the chamber's plan versus him having to go get healthcare on his own. And as one of the things we'll talk about is because healthcare on your own as a small business is expensive. So having
Yeah.
that buying power and tapping into that is important in order to be able to thrive and survive even as a business owner before you're even thinking about what you're offering to your employees. So, okay, but let's talk about like now that we got that out of the way, kind of the very much the core of what you do, because you were saying when we talked before, in order to tap into those additional services, I believe everybody needs to be a part of the payroll. And then they have the option to do these additional services.
Correct.
And so I just want to start talking about payroll at first, because we all know that if we have employees, we have to pay payroll. And it's one of
Right.
those things that I think is scary for people. And it's one of those things that makes people at times misqualify or misclassify, not qualify, classify their team members to contractors. Because like, I just don't want to deal with payroll. And as someone who's had employees, I don't think payroll's all that hard when you have the proper tools and systems, everything that are going to be doing it. It's just plugging in. They work so many hours. Everything else is done for you. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about your payroll services and also why someone should be using payroll services instead of calculating everything out by hand and handing over a paper check from their checkbook.
Yes, no, that's a great question, Jamie. And I mean, running payroll by yourself or in-house, there's just a lot of things that can go wrong, especially as a new business owner. So, am I doing the deductions correctly? Am I filing the taxes on time? Am I filing them correctly? You know, did I put in, all of the correct information? If I did I pay the employee the right amount? So all these different areas where, things can go wrong. And, with GMS, one of the ways that we do it is we run our clients' payroll under our federal tax ID. So what that really does, it removes the liability from the business owner and actually shifts it to GMS from a tax standpoint. So when we sweep a company's account for the payroll, they show up as paid in full to the IRS. So really that whole burden of filing the taxes on time and correctly, it falls on us and takes it off of the business owner's shoulders. The other piece of it is they're going to have a dedicated person with GMS that really advises them and works through, any challenges they would have on, a certain payroll, or if anything there is that they need to change. And then just the time factor. If someone doesn't know how to do taxes and they don't know how to, do deductions, and they don't know how to do garnishments if employees have those, it just takes up a lot of time where they could be spending that time growing the business and investing in the business and doing what they're really good at.
Right. Yeah, because when you're a small business, you probably don't have an internal payroll coordinator or things like that. And yeah, you might be able to hand it off to your let's say front desk assistant or your virtual assistant, but are they really knowledgeable in it, or are they just doing it just like you would be doing it? I know for
Sure.
myself, like with the payroll system and everything that I use, it's kind of like, surprise, here's a form you have to sign. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, that would be another thing I have to keep track of what is this form? When do I have to fill it out? When's it due? And it's just like being able to use a system that it's like, here, it's done. We just need your signature. It's like, all right, awesome. I don't have to worry
Yes.
about that. And I know from mine, there was a form that they filed late, and I got the notice because it was filed late for my business, but they took care of the penalty for it being filed late and everything. And I was just like, okay, I don't have to worry about that. It wasn't on my shoulders. So
Exactly.
one of the questions that I have that people might be thinking is, okay, so obviously when you have employees, you're paying taxes, there's certain deductions and everything that come around. If there's things are being filed under your tax number and everything, does that mean the business misses out on deductions or benefits from having employees?
That's a great question. So, the answer bluntly is no, they don't actually. And the reason being, we're certified by the IRS. So they recognize the PEO relationship, and we're a certified PEO. So a small business maintains all of their tax credits that they currently qualify for. We're just essentially remitting the taxes on their so we're taking that liability off, but it's not going to be a negative in any way to the company by using a PEO to actually file that.
That's good. That's great. Because
Yes.
I know I've heard that in the past that if you use these sorts of companies, you lose your employees. And it's like, but there's pluses and downsides. And even if that was the case, there's some situations where it's still like, yep, it's worth it, take them. But other
Yeah.
cases it might not be. But this sounds like it really is that true benefit for both sides. You don't, as a business owner, there's so many things you don't have to worry about, but you're still getting the benefits of having those employees when it comes to deductions and things like that at tax time.
Exactly. And you bring up a good point too, because the PEO industry in the past, there used to be what was called employee leasing. And that's where the businesses really could lose direction and control over the employees. So the company that was doing the employee leasing could hire and fire employees. So it's really changed over the last 10 or 15 years. And, GMS, for example, when I mentioned we do co-employment. So the business maintains all direction and control. We can't do any hiring, firing, managing any day-to-day operations. They're just getting the benefits of having some of the liability shift, and then also taking advantage of, our subject matter experts from an HR standpoint, and then really our large group buying power that we can provide on some of those benefits.
Right, right. Okay. Before we shift to some of those other benefits, I do have a few more questions about payroll that
Yeah.
are coming to the top of my mind. So, well, I guess this one's not really a question, but it's just kind of a talking point of another benefit of using some sort of payroll company or payroll processor is we are living in a world of remote work. And what some people don't think about is, oh my gosh, things are different in different states. You have to worry about different taxes. You have to worry about all these different things. And so one of the things that I notice is when you use payroll services and everything, they're on top of that. They know what has to be done from this state to this state. They know the relationships between states because some states are reciprocal and some states are not. So there's different rules, there's different things, there's different things you have to file. There are some states that have state income tax, some states that don't. And it just kind of takes a lot of that pressure. As you said, you don't have to worry about what to do because someone who's knowledgeable at it is doing it for you and everything. So I feel like that is definitely one of the benefits of not pen and paper doing your payroll yourself and everything we talked about. You need somebody or something to be leading that knowledge with your payroll.
Absolutely. And we have clients in all 50 states. So the people that are processing that, we understand the rules and regulations that are going on in every different state. Some states, kind of as you mentioned, they have, local taxes that are taken out different. They have, different tax rates. They have some of them, as you mentioned, don't have income tax. There are different compliance rules and regulations and forms that employees need to fill out if they're onboarded in Alabama versus if they're onboarded in Ohio. So all of those types of things really do tie into payroll, as you mentioned, and just really that compliance piece, which I think the term compliance a lot of times can scare, a business owner, especially a newer business owner. And so we want to, help them sleep a little bit better at night by not having to worry.
Yes, definitely. Okay. And then what right now I think is my final question about payroll is what is the benefit of using a company like yours or a physical person and everything that's going to be doing your payroll versus like using a payroll thing that's built into, let's say, your bookkeeping tool? Because I know a lot of small business owners use Gusto, Wave, if you use that as your bookkeeping tool, has a payroll component as well. And what are the differences or benefits of using a company, an outside company for your payroll versus something that's built in and comes automatic or comes with a small fee with your bookkeeping platform?
Yeah, I really think that's a great question. And a couple of the pieces of it is one, you're going to really have a dedicated person because even if you're using some of those internal softwares, it's still going to be on you as the business owner a lot of times to figure something out if there isn't something that or if there's a challenge or whatever it may be, because there are different intricacies when it comes to payroll. But then the other piece of it is, our technology, it allows them to really have everything streamlined in one platform from payroll, taxes, compliance, as well as, an employee's onboarding documents, I-9s, W-4s, everything in one spot. And then they're going to have that dedicated person from GMS that's really able to advise them and, walk them through any challenges that they would have from a payroll standpoint. And I think the last piece, which we did kind of already touch on, is the payroll tax liability. It's just, preventing that situation of, a business owner having to have a fine or, something like that, they probably don't want to deal with when they're just starting up a business.
Right, exactly. Okay, thank you so much for that, Mark. All right, now let's talk about the topic I am super, super excited to get into today because I feel like it's something that small business owners, as soon as they hear this, they're like, nope, 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 can't do that, can't do that. Like, I'm not big enough yet. I don't have the money for that. And that is benefits.
Yes.
And rightfully so, in many cases, we look at benefits and we say, I can't afford that. I can barely afford benefit like healthcare for myself. Like, there's so many times where I'm in conversations of small business owners. It's like, well, my spouse can't leave their job because they work for a corporate company and that's how my family has healthcare. And it's like this big leap of going from working for a corporate company to your family being fully into a small business and then bringing on employees. And there's so many times where I'm talking to business owners, they're like, no one wants my position. And one of the first things people ask sometimes is, well, what are the benefits? Oh, I need health insurance. If you can't offer me health insurance, I can't come work for your company. And it really puts small businesses at a disadvantage. It's one of those things that sometimes I think people don't realize is, let's just say a $50,000 job working for a corporate company and a $50,000 job working for a small business are not the same when it comes to salary if one includes health insurance and the other one doesn't. So one of the things that you talked about that your organization does is give people buying power when it comes to benefits. So first off, what does buying power mean when it comes to benefits and going through an organization like yours?
Sure. And, you brought up a very good point. How does a startup compete with a competitor that has 1,000 employees and are offering Fortune 500 benefits? It's just not feasible typically to have that same type of benefits plan. So with the PEO relationship is where the buying power comes from. So we have over 20,000 lives on our master healthcare plan. So instead of a company with 3 employees getting rates for 3 people, they're getting rates for a much, much larger pool. And therefore, since we're taking into account all of those bodies on the plan, all of those premiums that we're collecting, we're able to provide discounted and much more competitive rates as opposed to, if a business shops for three people. I mean, when an insurance company looks at that, they think, well, if one of these people, has a condition or gets sick or has a procedure, we're going to lose money as the insurance company because we're only, collecting a certain amount of premiums. So we look at it much differently since we have such a large pool. And that's probably the number one reason right now why I would say, companies have utilized GMS is so they can compete and provide Fortune 500 type benefits to their company, even though they've only got 3 people, 5 people, 10 people, or just starting out.
Right. Yeah. So, just kind of like to recap with that, like if you've never, for the listening, if you've never had to deal with this or never really looked into this or thought about this, is it costs you as a small business more per person to get the same healthcare plan than it does a company with 100 employees or 1,000 employees or 5,000 employees, because they look at it as, let's just say it's this cost of a plan split between people. So it does cost more per person, which is why large organizations, you could have your whole family on there and they're not really charging you more, to insure your whole family. But you as a small business, you're like, oh my God, if someone puts their spouse and their kids and all these things, I can't afford that. I can barely afford this one person. And it is true. It costs you more for that one person as a small business if you go get your individual plan than those big companies are paying for that same person.
Significantly more. And that's something that, a small business, they just a lot of times can't afford that cost of, $800 or $900 per employee, for just basic healthcare, which is a lot of times what people see if they go to the open market or, they quote directly with an insurance carrier. So it's just not feasible a lot of times. And that's why we did create this plan back in 2018 and have obviously seen a lot of growth from it. And as we continue to have more and more clients join our plan, our rates continue to become more and more and more competitive for our new clients. So something that we're very passionate about, our owners very passionate about, helping small businesses being able to afford this. So that way, realistically, the goal of a business is to grow it. And this way we can help provide some scalability by being able to retain and recruit, better candidates.
Right. Yeah. Because these are benefits that, in a way, they're not optional to the end user. If your company doesn't provide you health insurance as an employee, you have to go and get it on your own. It's not something that right now we can really say, I'm choosing not to have. So you have to think about that is if you don't provide it to your employee, it's an expense that then is deducted from their overall paycheck that you're giving them. Even if they have to go get it on their own, which means it's money that's not going to keeping a roof over their head or food on their table or paying for childcare or paying for those other necessities. So it's an expense to your employees. And I think as businesses, we should be helping our employees with their necessary expenses, because it's one way or another. We either have to increase our base pay or we have to provide them these benefits that they have to provide themselves anyway.
Absolutely. And it's, like you mentioned, if someone's having to get benefits on their own and they're getting paid a $50,000 salary, that $50,000 salary isn't going anywhere near as far because of the cost that they're incurring on their own.
Yeah.
So that's a great point that you made. And really, it's such a challenge for small businesses and, being able to tap into a larger company's buying power a lot of times can really help, solve that problem.
Yes. Seeing they're tapping into the buying power as the business owner, are you saying here are the health plans that are eligible for your employees to buy into? Or do I have to do research on my own side to say, all right, here's what I want? Or are you guys handling all that research, all that negotiation and everything? So as a business owner, once again, it's just like, awesome, good job. Thanks for doing this for me. Or what's the work that I have to do when it comes to that time of year and reselecting plans?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I mean, we want the business owner to be the one at the end of the day that's going to determine, okay, what am I going to offer my employees? But what they do is we have a dedicated benefits specialist that's a licensed broker that we have 17 different plan designs. So they will come out once we put the quote together and sit down with the business owner and say, hey, these are the rates for all of these different plans. This is, a very rich plan with a low deductible and a traditional plan versus a high deductible HSA plan, which might be better for a younger employee that's not going to the doctor as often. And they'll say, these are the ones that we would recommend. At the end of the day, you can pick any of these plans that you'd want to offer to the employees, but we're there to advise them and really walk them through it because a lot of times these business owners, especially, the ones that are just getting started, haven't went through this process before. So they're not going to have to do a bunch of research on their own. We're going to present the plans, recommend, and give reasons why we would recommend those. And then at the end of the day, they'll be able to make that decision on what's best for their company.
Yeah. So looking at that, let's say I'm a client of yours and the business next door is a client of yours. We might have different health insurance plans for our employees because out of those 17, we pick different things that fit well for our business, our employee needs, and everything. So it's not you dictating what I have to give my employees. You're giving me options, but probably much fewer options in a much more succinct package than if I was going out and doing it on my own and having to figure out, talking to a million companies and figuring out all those things and everything.
Exactly. Yep. So we're gonna put all those plans in front of you as the business owner, and give you those options. But yes, you may have a completely different plan than the business next to you because it fits better for your employees, and just as a better offering for your group.
Yeah, good, good, good. All right. Well, what about other benefits? Does this buying power or being in this kind of collective help with things like disability insurance, life insurance, or those other things that large corporate companies provide to their employees all the time?
Yeah, we do. We do have some mass plans when it comes to dental, vision, short-term, long-term disability, life insurance. And then we also, through our payroll and HRIS system, all employees that are clients of ours, they're going to be able to have a slew of voluntary benefits that they can elect on their own that they just wouldn't have the vehicle typically to be able to elect. So things like, everyone kind of laughs, but pet insurance, right? A lot of people, they always, giggle when they hear that, but then sometimes, it's actually a benefit for them if they have a dog or a cat or whatever it may be. You can get LifeLock, you can get, Teledoc or legal service. So a lot of different benefits. And really, when someone is, I know one thing that you help with is, how they find candidates and the best candidates to bring on and all those kinds of things. If someone can put together in a benefits package that we offer all of these benefits, it's just a much more attractive job.
Yes, yeah, definitely. When you're able to list, we offer all this versus we offer flexible scheduling and that's it, which is important to some people. It really is. It's some of those people
Sure.
that could be the number one thing they're looking for. But just because that's the number one thing they're looking for doesn't mean they don't look for all these other things. Just kind of like throw out a personal example here is my husband, he's a software developer. He's worked for a lot of startups and small businesses throughout the years. He's worked for some larger companies too. And especially after I started my own business and we were dependent on his benefits, is he went to go switch jobs. The first thing I said is, all right, we can't just look at the salary. We have to look at what are the other benefits that are being offered to make sure that if you make a move, it's either lateral financially or an increase in what you're coming home with. But we don't want to go down and we don't want to drop benefits that we're used to having. And to be able to compete that in the market, once again, as a small business, because people aren't earning less or getting less when it comes to that overall compensation because they're working for you is going to make you so much more attractive to candidates.
Definitely. And another piece of it too is, 401k is another benefit that is a great retirement tool. And it's very similar to how we do the healthcare is we have a lot of buying power on the 401k. So just what that means is it really reduces employees' costs inside of the funds because we have hundreds of $1 million of assets in our plan. And then for the business owner, there is just so many rules and regulations and compliance pieces as it ties to a 401k. And we take on that fiduciary liability. So, we file the 5,500 tax form. We handle the continuing education for the employees. We shop the funds. And really, we just manage everything associated with it. And it's a very, very affordable option because of our size, two businesses to offer.
Yeah. So it's really, you're that whole, if we were at a corporate company, your organization provides all those HR benefit services that would typically fall under that HR bucket in an organization. Taking all that off of the business owner's plate, besides just having to make those high level decisions, which that's where you want to be as a business owner, making those high level decisions and having the skilled, knowledgeable people worrying about all the details, that they're just reporting up to you. Hey, here's the option, select one. What do you think? We need your signature to move forward. That's where you want to be with a lot of things, not completely detached. So they're not making the decisions 100% for you,
Right.
but bringing the information to you so you can just say, yep, sounds good, fits with our budget, fits with our plan, let's do it, and makes you competitive in the market.
Exactly. And that's, one of the big challenges for business owners that we see, especially when they're starting out is they're getting pulled in 20 different directions, right? So our goal is to help create capacity for them. So that way they can focus on the things that are truly important to their business and the things that they're really good at. So if they can focus on those things only and not have to worry about these things that aren't going to make them any money, and they're just going to create headaches and stress, that's, really how we do want to help, the business owners.
Right. And it is one of those things like, well, I know when you and I, Mark, were talking about the business model and everything, as we talked about before, as we mentioned today on the podcast, everyone has to start with the payroll area. And then it's like all these spokes of the wheel coming off of that. And you get to choose as a business what other services you sign on for, whether it's the HR services, whether it's these benefits, whether it's, whatever else it is that your company offers. So
Yeah.
if you're like, let's say, for example, you're working with growing your team and you're like, I don't need the recruiting services. You're not forced to use those recruiting services. But if you're like, I don't have someone on my team already that's helping me with hiring and recruiting and doing all that work for me, you guys offer it. So it's like you get to pick and choose as the business owner what support you need based on what strengths and skills you already have or don't have within your organization.
Yes, it's very a la carte, and we really do tailor our service to each client. So, like when you mentioned, the HR piece, we have clients where we do all their HR. So we create their employee handbook, their job descriptions. We provide termination advice and assistance. We handle all the compliance. We help, with training and development, all those types of things. And then we have some clients where they have an internal team, from an HR standpoint. And so we may only be assisting in one or two of the HR areas. So, and that's totally fine. Our goal is really to just make, the relationship is beneficial to, each specific company and what they really need.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. I have a burning question of mine that I think people might be listening to. Because once again, we're talking about all these things and we're talking about how they're for the small business owner and to help you have buying power as a small business owner. But then I know there's some people out there thinking, but am I big enough yet? Is this for, because we
Sure.
find this a lot. We hear small businesses and then it's like, but you need 50 employees to work with us. You need this, you need to make this much revenue. And it's just like, great. Yes, technically that's a small business too, but I'm not at that level yet. So what is kind of like the minimum threshold that people can sign on to work with you? How many employees did they need in order for you guys to say, yes, we'll take you on as a client and you could be part of our group?
Sure. And it's a great question. And honestly, even one employee, we're able to bring them on as a client. Now, is a one employee company going to see as much of a benefit as maybe someone with 5, 10, 15 employees? Not necessarily. But if, healthcare is the big driver and they can't find a, competitive plan, we can start a group plan with the one or two employees. And then as they continue to bring people on, they're able to offer those benefits.
Yeah. So for one employee, does that mean the business owner plus one employee, or does the business owner themselves count as that one employee?
Typically, it's the business owner plus one employee.
Okay.
Yes.
So, but I think, but it does show as you're bringing on that first employee. Obviously, if you're a business owner, you're just a business owner yourself in your business, you're probably not paying yourself through payroll. You're doing owner deductions and everything. So you
Right.
wouldn't qualify anyway because you need the payroll services. But yeah, once you have that one employee and you need those payroll services and everything, especially if you're a business that's looking to grow rapidly, I say do everything you can to set yourself up for success with that first employee so you don't have to change systems and processes quickly as you grow, because when you're in that major growth mode, switching to another company and getting everything set up, no matter how easy that company makes it for you, there's still decisions you have to make. There's still conversations that have to be had. They're still going through the process of closing down one system to start over at another system. So you might as well, sometimes I say it's, if you're thinking forward and saying, I'm hiring an employee this January, I am then going to be having 5 employees by the end of the year. I say set yourself up for success early on, even if it's going to cost you a little bit more with that first employee to get on those platforms. So that way you don't have to switch over by the end of the year.
And you nailed it because, honestly, with a company starting out and they have their first employee, that's really when you want to have your policies, procedures, all those things put in place. So that way you don't have to scramble and, kind of be retroactive on making sure you are compliant when you have 3, 4, 5 employees. Or if you have an employee issue, how do I handle this? Oh, wait, I didn't create, a policy. They didn't sign off on anything. And now it's a challenge for a business owner that, they probably don't want to have to go down that road.
Right. And I think that's especially important. You just said something that triggered something in my mind is compliance. Some
Mm-hmm.
states, some municipalities have rules and things you must do if you only have one employee. Some states, you don't have to do that until these things until you have 5 employees. Some states, it's different of what that threshold is. And so do you want to be responsible for knowing, okay, I passed that threshold? Okay, let's say your business continues to grow. We're talking about health insurance and how you can provide it anyway, but once you reach a certain point, health insurance is mandatory for you to provide. But some people think, but I don't have 50 full-time employees. Well, guess what? Your part-time employees factor into some of those numbers as well. So it's
Sure.
like when you're working with an organization that this is what their core is, what they're good at, where they can advise you on all those things. It doesn't have to be that, oh my gosh, we're not doing this. Let me see if I can fix it before we get into trouble. They can say, hey, guess what? You're hiring that third employee. Did you know that now you have to have workers' comp that you didn't have to have before? All right, here's the options, but it's mandatory. Let's get you set up.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's one good example here in Florida is one of the changes that was made, over the last year is E-Verify. If you have 25 employees, now you're mandated to put everyone through E-Verify. So that's something that we got with all of our clients down here, our HR team did, and made sure they were aware of it before anything went into place. And then we set up, the proper procedures so that way we could handle it on their behalf and just make sure that they were compliant and didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah. And I know there's so many things as a business owner I find out about of like rules changes or things like that, or ooh, do I qualify for having to do this or not? Because I'm in some like business Facebook groups or forums and someone brings up a question. I'm like, wait, what is that? How did I miss that announcement? How did I miss that like kind of rule change? But unless you're a person that's your job to stay on top of all these new regulations and changes, you're going to miss things just
Yeah.
because you don't see it, or that you don't know that it applies to you, or you think this thing and it's like, oh, that's for corporate companies. And you don't realize that, yeah, it was put in place for corporate companies, but the threshold of employees that you need, oh, wait, you qualify. You have to do this too.
Yes, and with all the other things that business owners have going on, them having to worry about all the compliance pieces and rules and regulations that change when you pass 5 employees and 10 employees and you go to this state and that city, it's
Yep.
more than any one person can handle if they're trying to run a business and really just kind of bogs them down. So.
Yeah, because I think in Florida, um, unless you're in a certain industries or whatever, you don't have to have workers' compensation until you're over, what is it, 3 or 5 employees, whatever it
Mhm.
is. But there's other states where you need it with one employee. So if you're hired remotely across state lines and you're thinking, oh, well, I don't have to pay it because I'm not at that threshold yet. oh, wait, guess what? You could be getting yourself into trouble because it's required for that employee in their state because you have to follow their state rules if they're more protective and restrictive when it comes to what's required.
Yes, and workers' comp, I mean, it's different every single state. I mean,
Mhm.
it could be three employees, it could be one employee, it could be no matter what. It could be certain levels of coverage that they have to have. There's really every state runs it a little bit different. So yes, it's definitely a challenge for, a business owner to have any idea, to have all the knowledge, to be able to make sure they're compliant in those areas.
Yes, yes. All right, Mark. Well, we are coming to an end. It's time to wrap things up. I think this was so much information. Like, hopefully, for those of you who are listening, you feel a little bit more confident and knowledgeable about these subjects and how benefits and everything is within your grasp. Like, this is within your grasp, things you can be building into your budget, and it's not going to break the bank because there are options out there that are going to help you. So, Mark, if someone's like, this is amazing, this is awesome, I need this. I realize I can start providing my employees benefits. How can they get in touch with you?
Great question. So the couple main ways. One is my email is going to be M as in Mark and then HURRELL at groupmgmt.com. Also connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Mark Hurrell, MarkHurrell. And then also, I'll throw out my, cell phone number. It's 224-531-1229. Feel free to reach out. We also are doing a little promotion. Anyone that reaches out by Friday, they'll be entered into a raffle for a pair of AirPod Pros. So feel free to reach out. I'd love to connect with you.
Awesome. And yes, all those links, the email address, the number will be over in the show notes that you can find on growingyourteam.com. All right, Mark, my final question that I have for you that I ask all my guests, we've all had leaders or managers who have stood out to us. Think of a leader or manager that has stood out to you and share with us one thing about them.
Yeah. So one of my former sales managers, when I was a sales rep, really stood out to me. And one thing I observed and has helped me as I've become a manager is how he managed different personalities and managed them differently. So, we would have people on a team where some people need a lot of positive reinforcement. And then we have some people on the team where they, need to be managed very bluntly. For me, I prefer someone to just kind of tell me, how it is, tell me the things I'm doing well and the things I need to work on. And then I'm going to go and just get to work at that. And then some people, they need to hear the things that they're doing well more so than the things that they're, really struggling with to be able to, have the most success. So I just really saw him kind of be a chameleon with each different member of the team. And I think that's one of the reasons why our team was so successful and why he was so successful is because he had the ability to do that and really kind of pivot based off of once he got to know the person and really understand what their motivations were.
Yes, yes. I feel like that's so important. Like we're all different. We're all individuals. Like you can't treat everybody the same and expect to get the same results out of people. And sometimes it's just that those little things of how do you address a conversation with this person that makes all the difference.
Absolutely. And I've had managers on the other side of it who, haven't changed it. And you could just see the results, and you typically see a lot of turnover in those situations and, less production. So,
Yeah. It just reminds me of one of the podcast episodes that just came out as we're going to record this. I think it's episode 213, where it's kind of, I talk about the what's in it for me. And it's just really how to get your individual employees to actually care about your goals and the success of your company. And it's all about tapping into that individual. And it seems like a lot of work if you've never done that before, but
yeah.
actually, it reduces the amount of conversations that you have to have when you focus on what's in it for your employees and how do you motivate that individual, because you're more likely to connect that first time versus having to have multiple conversations around the same thing, the same topic over and over and over again with that same person.
Well, and it's, the one saying, it's kind of a cliche. I'm sure a lot of the listeners have heard it before, but I do think it's very true is, people don't care how much you know until you show them how much you care. And,
Yep.
so once you build that relationship and understand their motivations, your words and trainings and all those kinds of things are going to carry a lot more weight.
Yes. Yes. All right, Mark. Well, we have to wrap up for today. So thank you so much for joining us today on the Growing Your Team podcast.
Thanks for your time, Jamie. I appreciate it, and looking forward to staying connected with you and connecting with some of the listeners.
And that wraps up this episode of the Growing Your Team podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to follow or subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss new episodes. And if your favorite podcast app has the ability, leave a review and let us know what you love about the show. As you wait for the next episode, be sure to follow Growing Your Team on Instagram at Growing Your Team, or head on over to growingyourteam.com to access more resources and learn how growing your team can support you as you master the art of hiring.